Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
Writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View.
All right! Excuse me. All right, this is Jessie. I am so happy to be back with you guys. It has been a week of it. It has just been one of those weeks where everything was conspiring against me, I think, so that I was having trouble getting on the air. But I'm back with you. I'm here. I'm live on KLRN Radio. You can join me in the chat room on KLRNradio.com. You can shoot me a tweet at Jessie's POV. I even actually remembered to post my show prep on my website, jessiespov.com. Miracles never cease today, guys. They really don't. They really don't. All right. What is going on in the world that U.S. News just isn't doing a great job of covering? Because you know that's what I do. If you are a regular listener to this show, or a new listener, welcome, thank you. You know that I talk about mostly international affairs. I pretty much shy away from U.S. politics. I do a little bit of it where it intersects with international affairs, so usually State Department, Defense Department. As far as presidential campaigns, only if they intersect with what I'm doing. Sorry. All right. So, Iran's taken another Iranian American. There's Secretary of State Kerry is over in Europe for meetings. I've got some audio clips from there. I've got some Defense Department clips. There's not really any big Mosul news. I've got a couple of stories from Aleppo. I don't really have any big Mosul news, so I'm probably not going to do much with it tonight, folks. I don't see any point. If there's nothing to say, why say it? All right, as usual, I do have my show prep. Oh yeah, I got it for you right here. And I've got a couple of little other blips. You know me, I always find something to talk about. So, like I said, I am going to start off with a story that intersects U.S. politics, just because it's a serious international relations story. President-elect Donald Trump spoke today with Taiwan's president, a major departure from decades. Yes, I said decades of U.S. policy in Asia, and a breach of diplomatic protocol, with ramifications for the incoming president's relations with China. All right, for those of you who don't have your China-Taiwan scorecard, I'm going to boil this down real simple. They don't like each other. I'm not going to go into the history and the whys and wherefores. But this exchange is one in a string of unorthodox conversations with foreign leaders Trump's had since his election. It comes at a very tense time between China and Taiwan, which earlier this year elected a President Tsai Ing-wen, who has refused to accept the notion of a unified China. In other words, Taiwan used to kind of hard to be China. They still kind of sort of are, but they're not. It's complicated. I may have to do a Saturday slowdown on it for you. But that would be another day and another show. It's not clear whether Trump wants to do a more formal shift. The phone call calls into question whether or not Trump adheres to the basic foundation of the U.S.-China relationship. Trump's growing team of national security and foreign policy advisors, who include several people who have been strong supporters of Taiwan in Republican administrations, including Stephen Yates, Deputy National Security Advisor under Vice President Richard Cheney. Trump apparently considered a hotel investment in Taiwan earlier this year. In recent years, in the face of Taiwan's waning economic power and decreasing international recognition as a separate entity from mainland China, Taiwanese diplomat representatives in Washington have been trying to raise their stature. And it's looked like a losing battle until Donald Trump spoke with the government of Taiwan. And President Ronald Reagan infuriated the Chinese by inviting a Taiwanese delegation to his inaugural ball, and his administration included a long-running tussle over whether to reprioritize Taiwan. Bush caused a kerfluffle when he suggested the United States might defend Taiwan militarily, but that too blew over. So this may be something, it may be nothing, but I did feel it was worth bringing to your attention. Alright, since we're discussing Asia, I've got several other stories from that part of the world. So let's get on with it. I've even got a couple from Europe. Come on, would it ever be me if everything was already perfectly organized? Filipino police officials have captured 2 local sympathizers of Daesh who allegedly tried to detonate a bomb near the U.S. Embassy and prompted authorities to raise a terror alert. National Police Director General Ronald De La Rosa said to the 2 militants who were separately arrested on Wednesday initially wanted but failed to detonate the homemade bomb at Manila's seaside Rizal Park, their initial target. The bombs were designed to explode remotely with the use of a cell phone, also failed to explode near the embassy. Praises for faulty construction. And that was in Manila's tourist and diplomatic section, so it would have been a pretty big hit for that country. And I've got some more stuff from that part of the world. North Korea's military is gearing up for its annual winter training, and Pyongyang has prepared quote-unquote Top Gun-style fighter jets for the event. South Korean government sources have said that they have evidence that indicate North Korean troops are preparing a large-scale flight training exercise at Pyongyang's Sunan airfield. Kim Jong-un is expected to attend a tournament of North Korean pilots, and North Korea's entire fleet may be carrying out drills. Other sources indicate it's possible North Korea is simply emulating South Korea's annual Top Gun tournament in order to identify the best pilots. Kim has previously conducted military tournaments by mobilizing North Korea's cavalry and artillery units, and recently provided quote-unquote field guidance at a women's artillery firing practice where he determined the combat capabilities of the women troops and provided on-site guidance in order to raise the spirit across all troops. So, got a couple more at least one. Is it one or two? Okay, got 2 more North Korea stories. North Korea's Kim Jong-un told troops to wipe out South Korea during the annual winter training exercise that took place as the United Nations Security Council adopted new sanctions resolution that targets Pyongyang's coal exports. And if you remember my previous show on this, the United Nations is seriously, and boy do I mean seriously, trying to crack down on the hard currency that Pyongyang has access to, because hard currency, their currency isn't available outside their country, and it doesn't trade the same way that like the US dollar and all that does. For those of you who are a bit older, you might remember the years of the Soviet Union. Their currency couldn't be used outside their country. Well, that's pretty much the same with the North Korean currency now. It can't be used outside of North Korea for much of anything. It'd be interesting to have a little bit of it just out of amusement, but I'm not going there to get it. Pyongyang State news agency KCNA reported that the artillery units participating in the exercise include the 6th Marine Brigade and other frontline units responsible for targeting Seoul, the South Korean capital. Kim stayed to watch the drills that included rapid firing of artillery. North Korean state media described an island target for training was filled with loud explosions and light, and likened the spectacle to a delightful moment that simulated the sight of the enemy's cities and military targets submerged in a sea of fire. And I have... where did I put it? North Korea is attending Fidel Castro's funeral. A North Korean delegation led by top official Cho Ryong-hae expressed condolences for the death of former Cuban leader Fidel Castro on the island, according to Pyongyang state media. The delegation offered a message of consolation on Tuesday at the National Theater of Cuba, and a wreath from leader Kim Jong-un was delivered to the site. North Korean officials also observed a moment of silence in remembrance of Castro, who died at age 90. North Korea stated Cho met with Cuban Vice President Salvador Valdez Mesa on Wednesday and delivered a message from Kim for Cuban President Raul Castro. North Korea had ordered a 3-day mourning period for Castro, according to the Workers' Party newsroom Rongdong Sinum, and Kim described Castro as a close friend and comrade of the Korean people. Cho's visit to Cuba has also provided Pyongyang with an opportunity to renew diplomatic efforts with Cuba, a country that first established ties with Pyongyang in 1960 and maintains a friendship that survived the Cold War. As recently as June, Cuban Vice President traveled to North Korea as a special envoy and met with Cho in Pyongyang. KCNA also reported a high school in Cuba named after North Korea Kim Il-sung opened a new library after Kim Jong-suk, North Korea's founder's first wife. You don't often hear about the wives in North Korea. Anybody ever notice that? This one's a cross between a good news story and highlights a disaster. More than 2 decades after her son was executed, yes, I said executed, for rape and murder. Now this story is from China. Zhang Huzan has finally proven his innocence. China's top court overturned Ni Shibun's conviction Friday in a landmark case that exposed deep flaws in China's criminal justice system. Remember, folks, if you're traveling outside the United States, you are not subject to United States law, you are subject to the laws of that country. The moment the justice announced the verdict, Zhang burst into tears. Not only her, other people in the courtroom felt emotional too. Zhang said she was very excited about the review, and she'll visit his grave soon to tell him that his mom's efforts all these years weren't in vain, and justice will prevail in his case. The court said that Ni's family could ask for compensation for the government. Her refusal to stay quiet and work ceaselessly to clear her son's name seems to have made a big difference in this case. Authorities tried Ni behind closed doors and barred the parents from the courtroom, but Ni told a lawyer hired by his family that he was beaten into a confession on his 6th day in jail. Yes, beaten into a confession. 7 months after he was first detained, the government executed Ni without notifying his parents. For years it seemed no one would listen, but Zhang later found an unlikely ally in the People's Daily, the official newspaper of the ruling Communist Party. It ran a scathing commentary in September 2011. Rehabilitation means little to the dead, but it means a lot to a surviving family and all other citizens, the paper said. We can no longer afford to let Ni's case drag on. China is the world's most prolific executioner, killing thousands of people last year, according to Amnesty International. In 2013, China's top court banned the use of torture to extract confession, and amid widespread concern, it was being used to wrap up cases quickly. South Korea businesses feel pressure from China over THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Aerial Defense. Concern over Chinese retaliation in response to a decision to deploy a U.S. missile defense system continues to grow among South Korean businesses in China. Companies including Samsung are experiencing delays in standard procedures, including receiving certification for components like batteries. Challenges are being imposed to South Korean businesses at a time when Beijing appears to have tightened restrictions against Korean pop artists. Since October, no Korean pop artist has been permitted to hold shows in China, where Korean celebrities enjoy high levels of popularity. On Thursday, China-based sources told Yonhap local authorities. Yonhap, by the way, is a South Korean news agency, or at least newspaper. Local authorities have begun to take more serious measures, charging the South Korean conglomerate Lotte Group with an investigation. Lotte is the company that reached a deal with Seoul on a site for THAAD at its golf course in Seongju. Chinese authorities have conducted what the press describes as an unusually intensive investigation into Lotte's subsidiaries, ranging from tax audits to safety inspections at plants. A second source in Beijing said, quote-unquote, sanctions against South Korean companies have been implemented since Seoul announced its decision to deploy THAAD in July. China has been vocal about its opposition to THAAD and claims the system's powerful radar could be used for surveillance. The United States and South Korea maintain THAAD is for defensive purposes against North Korean missile provocations. On Thursday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Yang Shun denied state investigations into the Lotte Group have any connections to the government's opposition to the U.S. missile defense system. And I'm sorry, folks, but if you believe that one, I've got oceanfront property in Arizona. I'm sorry. China is the exact type of place where you and generations of your family will be targeted for something you had nothing to do with. Alright, let's see what else I have before I move on. We are going to probably pretty shortly leave Asia. Oh, I do have one more, just thumbing through my show prep. The pro-U.S. foreign policy of South President Park Geun-hye is now at risk that she appears to be on her way out over a growing corruption scandal. Here's several policies Park spearheaded with U.S. approval that could be jettisoned along with her. Park's initial policy towards North Korea was to engage through trust-building measures, but her approach made an abrupt turnaround after the North's nuclear test in January. It affected everything with North Korea and China and Japan, said John Delory, who teaches international studies at Yonsei University in Seoul. If she leaves, Park in February ordered South Korean companies to pull out of the Kaesong industrial complex to protest a North Korean missile launch. The plant uses North Korean labor and South Korean management and expertise and was a major source of funds for the North and one of the few remaining avenues for cultural exchange between the two countries. If she leaves office, the liberal opposition would likely reopen it. Park's new approach was in line with U.S. efforts to isolate North Korea and deprive it of foreign sources of income. New and existing sanctions show North Korea there are consequences to its unlawful and dangerous activities. U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, Kathleen Stevens, she was ambassador from 2008 to 2011, said opposition parties are likely to call for more active efforts to re-engage with Pyongyang on a raft of issues and argue Park's hardline policy has not worked. It would be a major project to reopen relations with the North, but options would include a resumption of food and humanitarian aid, plus family reunions that took place in past years. Such voices have already spoken out, and Chung Eun-moon, a foreign affairs advisor to South Korea's opposition, called for suspending joint military exercises with the United States and for encouraging dialogue with the North. Such a move with South Korea would be seen as a step toward rejecting the United States security umbrella in the region, the umbrella that has existed since the 1950s. Yun-sun, an analyst at Simpson Center think tank, says that this could be a split between the two long-term allies. Part after North Korea has conducted its fifth nuclear test in September, Park approved of the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system called Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, aka THAAD, to protect South Korean cities and 28,500 U.S. troops stationed in her country. The system allows the United States to assert its protective role and contain nuclear threats from rogue nations like North Korea. The proposed deployment angered China, South Korea's most important trading partner, which sees the system as a threat to its aircraft and missile capabilities. The deployment is also controversial among South Koreans who question the system's effectiveness. There are reports that North Koreans are already figuring a way around it. South Korea's Liberal Opposition Party, which seeks better relations with China in hopes it could temper North Korea, is among the fiercest critics of THAAD. While liberals may not cancel the $850 million system financed by the United States, they would likely block its expansion, and if President-elect Donald Trump follows through on his campaign promise to make U.S. allies pay for their defense, the THAAD deployment could be scrapped. Japan. Park's government this year ordered South Korean military to exchange security information for the first time with Japan. A bitter enemy in past decades, the arrangement was encouraged by Obama and his predecessors who've long sought reconciliation between the U.S. allies so they could cooperate on security and form a unified front against North Korea and China. Many South Koreans, however, continue to distrust Japan because of its occupation of Korea during the first half of the 20th century. South Koreans are always very skeptical of too much military cooperation between South Korea and Japan because of the history between the two countries. And North Korea and China, the South neighbors to the north and west, see the arrangement as the U.S. trying to create collective security. With the coming change of government, it's too hard to tell how this is going down. And as far as trade, how a post-Park Geun-hye South Korea balances policy towards the United States and China is also hard to predict, in part because the United States is going through its own transitions. South Korea's trade with China has gotten so big that South Koreans now worry about overdependence. That's why U.S. alliances become more valued. But Korea also has a huge relationship with Beijing. As a candidate, Trump called the U.S. Free Trade Agreement reached in 2012 a job-killing trade deal. He also threatened to impose tariffs on Chinese imports, which could hurt the economies of all the countries in the region. To save the free trade agreement, South Koreans will seek to point out increased trade and services that benefit the U.S. They're watching very closely, wondering what the new Trump administration will do. But South Korea is also developing an alternative since it shares a long history with China, and trade between the two outweighs trade with the U.S. and Japan combined. Under Park, South Korea joined the China-organized Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, a counter to Western development effort, and many among South Korea's opposition hope to develop a more conciliatory atmosphere towards China. This could spell further trouble for other U.S. priorities because the Chinese feel confident they have a piece of critical leverage over South Korean politicians. My, oh my, oh my. Where has the time gone? We've only covered Asia, and it is already the bottom of the hour and about time to pay those bills. All right, I do have more for you. I've got some stuff from Secretary of State Kerry and his trip abroad. I also will have another kind of good news story. And who knows, we may even take that trip through my mailbox I'm always threatening. All right, folks, I will see you on the other side of this commercial break.
The following message contains a special offer for listeners of this station. Are you a man over 40? Are you constantly looking for the nearest bathroom? Do you wake up multiple times a night to use the bathroom? Right now, Perfect Prostate is sending out free bottles of their groundbreaking new formula to listeners of this station. Perfect Prostate Formula was developed by medical doctor Mitchell Fleischer, and its ingredients have been clinically studied to reduce your frequent nighttime bathroom visits and promote healthy urine flow. Right now, preferred customers get their first bottle of Perfect Prostate absolutely free. There's nothing to lose. Perfect Prostate is guaranteed to reduce that constant urge to use the bathroom, especially at night, and promote healthy urine flow. Don't wait. Call now for your free bottle. Just pay shipping and processing. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251. Supplies are limited. One free bottle per household. Call now. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
You can lay down if you wanna. You can run away if you wanna. You can pretend that this is totally okay if you wanna. You can play dead if you wanna. Forget what they say.
Alright, thank you for hanging in there with me over that commercial break. Got a whole other stack of stuff, and I do have a little bit of stuff, but not. The reason I didn't do it at the top of the hour because it's not Mosul specifically. It's Aleppo, Mosul, Libya, a little bit of everything, kind of all thrown in. And I do have a couple of Iran stories. Does that surprise anybody? Does that really surprise anybody? That Iran's been up to a couple things. Really? It surprised you? You must not have been listening to this show very long. I bring Iran to light on a daily basis sometimes. Alright. Now, remember Obama paid ransom to get some Americans back from Iran a few months back? Well, Iran's at it again. An Iranian-American citizen and his wife have been detained in Iran since late July without being formally charged. The New York-based International Campaign for Human Rights in Iran said in a statement that Karan Vafardi and his wife, Afrin Nasiri, who run an art gallery in Tehran, were arrested by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard. The two are being held at Tehran's Evin prison. Alright, let's talk real quick about Evin prison. It is northwestern Tehran. It has a wing just for political prisoners. And if you've ever read A Time to Betray, now if you haven't, you need to get it on your reading list. It reads like a thriller, but it's nonfiction. It's a very brutal prison. The grounds of the prison include an execution yard, courtroom, and separate blocks for common criminals and female inmates. It was originally operated by the Savak, the secret police, and it was initially designed to hold 320 inmates, with 20 solitary cells and 302 large communal blocks. It has been expanded to more than 1,500 prisoner capacity, including 100 solitary cells for political prisoners, and that was done by 1977. Under the Islamic Republic, translation, after the revolution in Iran, the political prison was again expanded to hold 15,000 inmates. In theory, Evin was a detention center for those awaiting trial, after which the prisoners would be transferred to another prison. In reality, Evin served as a regular prison, as many waited years before being brought to trial. Prominent prisoners often serve their entire sentences in Evin. Executions take place at Evin. Asadullah Lavardi was the chief prosecutor of Tehran and served as warden until 1985. This guy is evil. He was often called the Butcher. of Evan. And I can go into the things because we are not FCC regulated that he did. However, I'm going to let the nickname, the Butcher of Evan Prison, speak for itself. So they're being held at Evan. It is nothing like a U.S. prison. Now back to what we're saying. Yet another case of a dual national snatched and held without charge or access to a lawyer represents an alarming continuation of a judicial system run by intelligence agencies with no respect for the law and no accountability. Their families until now had decided not to publicize their cases, hoping they would be released. Then when the families started receiving anonymous phone threats and demands for money, they decided to go public. Tehran prosecutor Abbas Jafari Doltabi said in August that dual nationals have been charged with organizing mixed-gender parties for foreign diplomats and their Iranian associates and serving alcohol at their home. Alright. Alcohol and mixed-gender parties are banned in Iran. In past months, several dual nationals, including Iranian Americans, have been arrested by the IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and sentenced to prison. In October, Iran sentenced Iranian-American businessman Semnak Namazi and his 80-year-old father, Bagar Namazi, to 10 years in prison each for cooperation with the United States. So if they are in Evan, this ain't cool. Now I do have what little the State Department had to say on it. I do have the audio clip. It's so brief.
So we've seen those reports of the detention in Iran of a person reported to be a U.S. citizen and a person reported to be a legal permanent resident. And I'm afraid that at this time I don't have anything more that I can provide on that other than to acknowledge that we were aware of those reports.
Yeah. No offense, that's a pretty short statement. Now, let's move on to a country we haven't brought up because there hasn't been any major news, but Secretary Kerry made some. Benghazi, Libya. Where have we heard that city and country before? Rival militias have clashed in neighborhoods across the Libyan capital of Tripoli, and the state-run Lana news agency says at least 8 militiamen have been killed. The clashes sent tanks and convoys of armed militiamen streaming into the streets. The sides are split between rival militias vying for control of the city. One has its origins in Tripoli, while the other is led by forces originally from the western city of Misrata and has Islamist leanings. Libya sank into lawlessness and division after the downfall of longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi. I seem to remember some rockets being launched into Libya because then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton thought it would be a good idea. Whew. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is currently attending the Mediterranean Dialogue Summit in Rome. And U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said there would be no foreign military intervention in Libya and called for a diplomatic solution as violence flared up in the capital, Tripoli. Our tools are diplomacy. We're not looking at other options. Why don't you just listen to his own words?
Our tools are diplomacy. We're not looking at other options that, I don't think any country is prepared to engage in sort of direct military action at this point in time. But we are using the tools of diplomacy in order to try to resolve the differences that exist in the fears that certain people have and the concerns that they have about what the makeup of the government is, what the representation is.
All right, so Kerry doesn't want a military solution. He wants a diplomatic one. it kind of fits since he is a diplomat. I'm not going to knock that. Now, if you remember your Syria scorecards, no, you don't need to pull them out. I'm just going to discuss Turkey. Turkish President Erdogan has said that when the EU keeps promises on visa liberalization for Turks, humanitarian aid, and opening new chapters, Ankara's talks to join the EU, then Turkey will also show good intentions. Erdogan was speaking to a group of provincial leaders at the presidential palace in the capital and said that Turkey'd run out of energy to chase after Europe. Erdogan also said that Ankara wants to maintain political and economic relations with Russia, Iran, China, and Central Asian countries at the highest level, but did not see good relations with the East as an alternative to the West or vice versa. So, basically, long story short, Turkey had made several moves to try and join the EU, and then there was this failed coup attempt this past summer, and Erdogan arrested literally hundreds of thousands of people, fired hundreds of thousands, and more or less declared martial law. And the EU's kind of going, Turkey, we don't know if we want you. And Erdogan's going, fine, buzz off. That's the real long and short of that one. I do have a couple more Mideast stories. Tel Afar, an Iraqi city near Syria that's been the key to sectarian catastrophes in both countries over the past decade. A mosaic of ragtag troops advancing against Daesh militants have one symbol in common: the image of Imam Hussein, the revered Shiite emblematic figure of ancient suffering and oppression at the hands of Sunni Muslims. Confident officials and military men say the army will lead the charge on the city, key to avoid inflaming sectarian frictions in staging areas for the offensive. However, state-sanctioned Shiite militia army units aligned with their cause run the show, positioning themselves to control the territory after the fight. Seemingly inevitable end result could open the door to fresh domestic and regional conflict. The militias, which are backed by Iran, have at least antagonized local Sunnis in the past, a track record that does not bode well for Tel Afar's current population, mostly Sunni Turkmen, and in previous Sunni areas taken from Daesh, such as Fallujah. They have been accused of extrajudicial killings, ethnic cleansings, and other abuses against civilians. Charges, of course, which they deny. I could have written that one. There is some political issue in interfering with the war. Some people said they don't want the Hashad to enter the city alone. Others say they want the army, which has sent thousands of volunteers to the city's outskirts. But we have a plan. Everyone will be surprised that suddenly there is no more Daesh. And for those of you who are new to the show, Daesh is the Arabic acronym for ISIS, ISIL, whatever you want to call it. And I prefer using it because it doesn't give them this. First of all, they hate it. And second of all, it doesn't give them, I'm not calling them a state because they are not a state. They're a self-proclaimed caliphate. It doesn't have a peg leg to stand on, much less a leg to stand on. With Iraqi army resources dedicated to Mosul, the main battleground with Daesh, the militias were given free rein over the city's western approach, where they hoped to establish a long-term presence and influence. The paramilitaries clearly control the road to Tel Afar with their flags and checkpoints lining it and army units passing only with permission. The Iraqi military has no jurisdiction here, while fighters headed to the front said they were ready to take the battles to Syria, home to the capital of Daesh. Militia men also maintain a popular animosity toward Israel and America, a staple of Iranian-inspired Shiite mass mobilization across the region. These actions undermine the sovereignty of the central-based government because the militias are not directly controllable by Baghdad, said Jennifer Calafera, from the U.S.-based Institute for Study of War. The groups are positioning for long-term presence and influence in northern Iraq and will exacerbate grievances in the process. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi said an investigation is underway into past abuses by militiamen and that scores have been sentenced to death and hundreds to long-term prison sentences. The plan is to now bring them all under the control of the Iraqi security forces. Recent legislation fully legalizing the militias was quickly rejected by Sunni Arab politicians who said it was proof of a dictatorship of the country's Shiite majority. The split raises concerns that Sunnis will reject Hashad Authority despite its claims to be inclusive for all Iraqis. Iranian support for the Hashad also raises concerns it may be modeled after the country's Revolutionary Guard and its client in Lebanon, which is Hezbollah, an Iraq's Shiite-led government launched its massive campaign to dislodge Daesh from predominantly Sunni Mosul, the country's second-largest city and the last major urban center in Iraq, still held by the extremist group last month. The militias have promised to help the Mosul campaign by encircling its western approach but stay out of the city proper. The same cannot be said for Tal Afar, flashpoint for Sunni insurgents since the U.S.-led invasion in 2003, a hotbed of al-Qaeda activity and an entry point for foreign fighters. It later became a significant recruitment base for Daesh and its leadership. After a major operation to clear the city of militants in 2006, the army being sent into the coming battle, the 92nd Brigade of the 15th Division itself was far from nonpartisan. It is composed almost entirely of Tal Afar Shiite residents driven from their home by Sunni extremists over the years and who may seek retribution when they return. It also has just several hundred men deployed, much smaller than the massive military presence in other areas. Near the front line at Tal Afar Air Base, still regularly shelled by Daesh, the 92nd Brigade is ready to enter the city along with the Holy Hashd and fight its way to the Syrian border. Major General Ahmad Salahi, commander of the 15th Division, has fought in the past with men of the 92nd and sees them as having high morale and strong and combative. These troops will enter the city first, he said, although he admits it is possible the Shiite militiamen will follow. Ayam Kamal, director of Middle East and North Africa, said that over the long term, the government must work to make the Hashd more inclusive for Sunnis. The biggest test for Hashd forces after liberation of territories from Daesh is willingness to scale back its presence in these areas and empower local forces. Alright, I am almost out of time. I cannot believe this. I've got more stories here than I've got time. Let's see. Alright, we'll do this one. Facing defeat in Middle East, Daesh may be plotting car bombings and kidnappings in Europe. The European Union's law enforcement agency has warned that Daesh could be seeking to ramp up its violent activity in Europe as it is increasingly incapable of committing violent attacks in Iraq and Syria. Europe and and several dozen... Okay, no wonder. Daesh has repeatedly used improvised explosive devices such as those used in Syria and Iraq. While they have not yet been seen in Europe, it is conceivable at some stage they could be reported. Modi operandi employed in Syria and Iraq, such as use of car bombs, may emerge as a method of attack in the EU. Europol also says the Islamic State group is interested in chemical weapons. The group is known to have used sulfur and mustard gas in Syria, and thought to be able to produce the gas itself. In addition, there are indications that Daesh is experimenting with biological weapons. Libya, just across the Mediterranean Sea from the EU, might become a new center of operations for the extremist group. As Daesh encounters defeat in Syria and Iraq, it is going to move elsewhere. Counter-terrorism experts expect that Daesh will start planning and dispatching attacks from Libya. Alright, we're going to do a sad story and then a happy one. In a country besieged by death and violence, Syrian social worker Anas al-Basha worked hard to bring laughter to children by donning a bright orange wig and acting silly. Better known to his young fans as the Clown of Aleppo, al-Basha was killed in the Mashhad neighborhood Tuesday. Now, even that point of cheer has been extinguished for many families suffering amid Syria's civil war. He lived to make children happy in the darkest, most dangerous place. The death of the 24-year-old clown came as Syrian government forces continued their all-out assault to regain control of what was the country's biggest city, which is now a massive pile of ruins, where 250,000 people have been struggling to survive. 100,000 of them children. Al-Basha was the director for a group called Space of Hope, and could have fled Aleppo with his parents in July. Instead, he donned a wig, painted his face, and spread joy to Aleppo's youngest victims. Anas, who refused to leave Aleppo and decided to stay there to continue his work as a volunteer to help the civilians and give gifts for the children in the streets to bring hope for them. All what Anas wanted was to bring happiness to the children of Aleppo. Alright, I think I have time for one more story. France returns art to grandchildren of Jewish owners forced to sell it before the war. The 16th century painting was sold by a Jewish couple as they were escaping Nazi Germany and was returned to their grandchildren. At a ceremony at the French Ministry of Culture in Paris, the French government returned a 16th century Flemish painting to Henrietta Schubert and Christopher Bromberg, descendants of the painting's original Jewish owners. When German Jews Hertha and Henry Bromberg were fleeing Germany before World War II, they were forced to sell the 16th century portrait of a man in Paris, though the exact artist isn't known and has been attributed to Jos van Cleve or to his son Cornelis van Cleve. Since it was sold in 1938, the Flemish painting changed hands a number of times, until recently it was held in a French museum, while French authorities sought out its rightful owner. Henrietta Schubert and Christopher Bromberg, the grandchildren of Hertha and Henry Bromberg, did not know about the painting's existence until lawyers informed Schubert they had found a painting that belonged to their family. You never expect something like this. The Nazis are dead, and this can help our wounds heal. While in the past claimants had to come forward themselves, the French government has stepped up efforts in recent years to locate people like Schubert and Bromberg, actively seeking out the rightful owners of art that has been looted by the Nazis. This heightened effort has led to the return of many more works of art over the last few years, including the 19th century drawer Trois Danses and Buste by Edgar Degas, which the Nazis looted in 1940. Earlier this year, it was returned to Vivian Dreyfus, the original owner's daughter. All right. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Jessie's POV. You can find me on Facebook at Jessie's POV. You can catch up with my show prep when I pop it up there on jessiespov.com, and you can also shoot me an email through the station at jessiespov at KLRNradio.com. And this show can be heard on iTunes, Google Play, and many other locations. All right, folks, on that note, you know what's coming. Yeah, you do. I'm out of here!